A Jasper man is arrested for committing fraud on a local bank. My one-on-one interview with New Ferdinand Police Chief Ricky Patton. And Kurt Guxell talks with IU radio personality Don Fisher ahead in sports. Those stories and much more are up next here on 18 WJTS News. Hello, I'm Bradford Raths. In your news, an investigation into fraudulently cashed checks at Freedom Bank in Jasper resulted in the arrest of a Jasper man on Wednesday. Jasper police say 66-year-old David Harvey of Jasper knowingly and intentionally cashed 5 different checks at Freedom Bank and knew that there were not sufficient funds in the account. Harvey's arrest is also tied to the investigation into the May 2nd arrests of Sean Smith, alias Sean Kinningham, and David Slayton on fraud charges. Slayton and Kinningham are currently in the DuBois County Security Center awaiting trial and face charges in other jurisdictions for similar fraud charges. Harvey was lodged in the DuBois County Security Center. He faces 5 counts of defrauding a financial institution, which is a Class C felony, and 5 counts of check fraud, which is a Class D felony. A complaint led to the arrest of a Velpen woman after she tried to forcibly take a child from her residence. Jasper police were called to the Camelot Inn along State Road 64 just after noon on Wednesday on a report of a woman who was causing a disturbance. Police say 45-year-old Robin Eckert of Velpen had forced her way into Unit 358, grabbed a 3-year-old girl, and took her out of the apartment. The baby's father was able to forcefully take back the child before police arrived. Eckert was lodged in the DuBois County Security Center. She faces a Class D felony for residential entry and a Class C felony for criminal confinement. The Huntingburg Police Department has a new lieutenant. Wednesday morning, Huntingburg Clerk-Treasurer Tom Dipple swore in veteran police officer Tim Mullen as the department's new lieutenant at the Huntingburg Board of Public Works and Safety's monthly meeting. Mullen has been a member of the Huntingburg Police Force for the past 9 years. Additionally, the Huntingburg Volunteer Fire Department has a new firefighter. Bradley Beekler, a Southridge High School graduate, will begin work for the department once he completes his training. Huntingburg Mayor Denny Spenner talks about Beekler's appointment and says both men will be good additions for their respective departments.
Bradley's a young man, just graduated from high school here at Southridge, and has been a very active member of our community all during his career. And this is the type of individual we just like to have on our department. He'll begin his service in a probationary role till he completes his training, and then be joining the fire department on a full time once those are completed. So in both areas, we feel confident we've got qualified people in those positions. We're very happy to have them join our team here at the City of Huntingburg.
Mullen replaces Bucky Lair, who, according to Chief Arthur Parks, resigned from the position for personal reasons. He remains on the force as a patrolman. The City of Huntingburg also wants to update its fire department code. City Attorney Phil Schneider told the Huntingburg Board of Public Works and Safety earlier this week that according to the code, the department is allowed up to 30 members. But another section of the code says up to 26 firefighters should live inside the city limits, and 2 are allowed to live outside city limits, but inside the city's 2-mile planning and zoning jurisdictional area, for a total force of 28. That section needs to be corrected to allow up to 27 to live inside the city, with up to 3 able to live in the jurisdictional area. Schneider also noted the code says the department can send no more than 6 firefighters on calls outside the city limits. It should instead read that 6 firefighters, including either the chief or assistant chief, should remain inside the city limits if the department is dispatched elsewhere. Fire Chief Scott Patberg also asked to add the department's standard probationary period for new firefighters into the code. The probationary period lasts through the completion of all training, plus an additional 6 months, typically about 11 or 12 months total. The board instructed Schneider to draft the new code to be reviewed at next month's meeting. Today marks day 2 of the 3-day Otwell-Ruritan Club's 4th of July celebration. The event got underway yesterday with a parade, go-kart racing, and tractor pulls. Tomorrow marks the last day of the celebration, and the event schedule for tomorrow will include garden tractor pulls, a cornhole tournament, and a demolition derby. A programming note for you, 18 WJTS will be airing 2 events from the Otwell-Ruritan Club 4th of July celebration. The Little Miss Firecracker Pageant will air next Thursday, July 11th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Yesterday's parade will air next Friday, July 12th at 7:30 Eastern Time. Both programs will be re-aired next Sunday, July 14th, starting at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, starting with the Little Miss Firecracker Pageant, followed by the parade. Once again, the Little Miss Firecracker Pageant will air next Thursday, July 11th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with yesterday's parade airing next Friday, July 12th at 7:30 Eastern Time. Both programs will be re-aired next Sunday, July 14th, starting at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, with the Little Miss Firecracker Pageant first, followed by the parade. To wrap up our news tonight, we bring you our weekly segment courtesy of the Indiana Youth Institute. This week, IYI CEO Bill Stanzakavich talks about the new child care laws that went into effect on Monday and what parents should be asking about before they allow a child care center to babysit their child.
There's some new child care laws out there. Tell me, one of them is getting federal background checks. Why is that important and necessary?
Yeah, in the state of Indiana now, child care providers must conduct a national criminal background check on people who might work or volunteer in their center. In the past, the state has always required a state background check, which is an effective tool, but sometimes can be incomplete. The national background check is much more likely to catch everything or as much as we possibly can before we allow this person to work or volunteer with precious children in those child care settings.
Some child care providers that accept subsidies for child care for low-income families, they also have some new rules and regulations. Can you tell me about those?
Yeah, there are several new standards for child care settings in the state of Indiana, especially those that receive the child care vouchers. Number one, everybody who works there needs to be 18 years old. They need to be trained on a wide range of health and safety issues. They need to be aware of safe sleep standards, as well as what is or is not appropriate discipline. They also need to be aware of how to properly and safely be involved with transportation of these children if they take them away from the child care center. So many standards like this are now coming into state law, and parents using child care need to make sure that your child care provider is following those laws.
And all of these new rules and regulations, they help parents know more consistently about what to expect from a child care provider?
You know, there are some great questions that parents need to ask, like, are you aware of the new state laws and are you following them? And if they say, what new state laws? Then, maybe they're not tuned in very well to what's happening. And most child care providers will say, absolutely, I am, and here's how I'm meeting them. You need to ask about child to teacher or child to caregiver ratio. Obviously, you want the smallest ratio possible. You want to ask about the training that those folks receive. You want to ask what are the standards for health and safety and transportation and discipline and safe sleep and so forth. Parents need to be very proactive in asking these questions as they search for child care for their children. There's another way to look as well. There's something called Paths to Quality. It was developed in Fort Wayne, Indiana by the Early Childhood Alliance, and now it has been adopted statewide. And there are 4 different levels. Think almost like karate with different colors of belts, right? And black belt is the best. Child care centers are kind of rated on this 4-tier standard, and parents should ask, where are you on the paths to quality, and then determine if that standard is suitable for your child.
And licensing, not every child care needs to be licensed in Indiana, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not a good child care facility. Can you tell me a little bit about licensing?
The whole issue of child care and licensing in Indiana is somewhat complex. Certainly there can be for-profit and nonprofit child care centers, faith-based and home-based child care centers that are licensed, and there can also be some of those that are not licensed. And just because you're not licensed does not necessarily mean you're doing this poorly or wrong, especially in a home setting. But parents should, again, just be vigilant, licensed or not, to make sure that that child care center is meeting the requirements of health and safety and discipline and safe sleep and criminal background checks and all these aspects that are required under federal law.
And what about home child cares? There's some special rules that go with that.
It's one of those myths. Once I reach so many children who are not related to me, then I can't have a home child care place anymore. Here's the number. It's 15. Once I have 15 children not related to me in my home, I cannot have any more of them and still be under the Indiana law for childcare. So that's a great question to ask. If parents are saying, hey, there's somebody in my neighborhood out of their house who's doing this, make sure that they don't have more than 15 non-related kids in that home.
You touched on it a little bit, but I want to pull it out. We talked about licensing, and we talked about the new state laws and path to equality, but any child care, what should parents go in and look for, whether they're licensed or not?
You know, there are several things. Obviously, health and safety are number one. You know, to make sure that it's a clean location, that you tour in advance, to make sure that it looks as safe and healthy as your home. Then you need to be asking them questions like, what types of criminal background checks are provided here in this center? What type of training do your people receive? What is the ratio? How many children per adults who work here? Is your staff aware of things like, safe sleep and discipline and how to look for child abuse and neglect and things of that nature? You might also want to ask, too, on a social educational side, what activities do you do with the children? And are they school readiness type of activities? Are they enriching activities? Or are you just sitting the kids in a chair and having them watch TV all day? Do you take field trips away? A lot of those questions to know what the day will be like for your child when they're there at that child care setting.
Once again, our presentation this evening is brought to you courtesy of the Indiana Youth Institute. Coming up after the break, my interview with New Ferdinand Police Chief Ricky Patton, plus your local forecast, sports with Kurt Gooksell, and Inform with Jasper Chamber of Commerce Executive Director Nancy Eckerly. That's all up next here on 18 WJTS News. Local people watching local people.